Welcome to the Leadership Series. My guest today is Emma Pollard, CEO of Clown Doctors Australia. Prior to joining Clown Doctors, Emma held senior roles with the Climate Council and Taronga Conservation Society Australia. Her role at sea as CEO of Clown Doctors Australia is her first appointment as CEO. Welcome to the Leadership Series, Emma. It is delightful to have you here today.
Thank you so much for having me, Liska. I'm really looking forward to our conversation.
Great. So, you and I have known each other for a long time. And when we first met, you were at Taronga Conservation Society, also known as Taronga Zoo, for those of you who don't know. And then, you had a stint at Climate Council. So I'm really keen to understand that move from the alignment between conservation and climate, but then moving more into the health space. And I want to understand how that made sense to you both personally and professionally.
Look, I think I'd start by saying if you were to ask me 5 years ago where I would be, it was probably not the CEO of Clown Doctors Australia. But that said, I'm very deliberate about the choices that I make, and in making what is on paper, I think quite obviously a fairly significant transition, certainly in terms of sector, what certainly held true and continues to hold true is that connection to purpose.
Yes.
So for me, it was about stepping back, and I did that after my time at the Climate Council, and really give myself space to consider what is the next step and what is the next space for me? Where do I want to put my energy and my time? Because it's the greatest commodity that we all have. And in doing so, I'm a little bit of a nerd, and I created a matrix for myself that really gave me 7 or 8 things that I needed to work through in considering any role, helped me decline some, but really put at the centre, as I said, purpose, and not just purpose for myself, but purpose that I could articulate really clearly to my kids, who were 5 and 7 at the time. But also in it, I didn't set out to have a CEO role, but I absolutely set out to have a role that carried influence. So I felt I wanted to be able to shift the dial.
Yep.
And in thinking about your particular question, that transition from conservation, climate into health, the 2 things for me were professionally that it was an opportunity to grow and develop and consolidate a set of skills that I developed in different roles at Taronga and at the Climate Council. But also I could see the future next steps. So being able to grow the impact of Clown Doctors Australia. Alongside that, personally, the link as a relatively new parent.
Yes.
My children would know and understand if mum wasn't at home what she was doing when she was interstate, when she was travelling, because they themselves have had experiences in hospital, they've had friends who've been through that process. What a lot of people don't know about our work as well is that we work in aged care. So one of the key draws for me was that breadth of work from paediatric health into supporting older members of our community. And my grandmother lived with Alzheimer's for 10 years before she passed away in residential aged care. And the need to be able to bring connection to spark joy for people who've given so much in their lifetime was something that hit me really quickly when I saw the role being available.
I think that's really, interesting, Emma, because I talk to people at different points in their career, and you called it a matrix. I just call it a mind map. I'm showing my age here. But really to centre, and I think that was a very intentional word, and it's a word that I use to centre the things that are important. And one of the things that I thought was really interesting was being able to articulate it to your children. And I think that really, sometimes people don't think about the role of family or values as a decision-making framework when you're considering a career option. So I found that really insightful. So, we go from animals to health, from paediatric to geriatric. What are the common threads?
So common threads in the day-to-day are purpose-driven organisation and people who are passionate about purpose. And I think once you've been in that space, I couldn't see myself moving left of centre from that. But I think the threads that run through them are connection, care and curiosity.
Okay.
And if I think about what that means for Taronga. That is building connection to wildlife, curiosity around what people can do, care such that they take those behavioural actions to improve the world that we all live in and a future for wildlife. When we talk about Clown Doctors Australia, that is at the heart and the essence of all the work that we do.
Yeah.
So our performers are able to transform the experience that people have of care by connecting deeply and connecting effectively, and by being curious and showing that consistent care every day.
Thank you. That's very succinctly put. Very good. So, Taronga is a large government-supported institution with a long history and legacy. How did that experience shape your early leadership career? And then I think when you came to working for more donor-funded charities like the Climate Council and Clown Doctors Australia, what did you need to consciously learn or unlearn?
It's a really interesting question. I think what I'd start by saying is it's probably less about it's been less about the type of organisation for me that Taronga might have been, or that the Climate Council or CDA is, but about the leadership style that you learn from those experiences. And also that there's probably nothing, if I'm honest, that I've unlearned. It's about how you adapt and change that to a new environment as part of how you transfer your skill set. I haven't necessarily sought to unlearn something. If I think about the particular lessons for me in leadership around what the Taronga structure and way of working taught me was the importance of innovating and continuously evolving, because whilst it receives a little bit of government support, it's actually commercial and non-profit too. So there's always been a donor lens, particularly to some of the work I did in the education conservation space. It's always been a donor lens to that. But it's the complexity of saying, how do we operate in an environment where we're having to do more because there is in that case, crisis in terms of wildlife and extinctions that we're seeing. In our space, we translate it to Clown Doctors Australia, it's the ageing population we're seeing, and in some cases, the challenge of our health service being unable to support people who are awaiting aged care. So you've got these challenges. How do you innovate and change and adapt the way that you're working? So I think that is something that I've absolutely taken from the Taronga experience and all the knowledge and experience that I was able to gain from people I worked with there. The piece around leadership that I think for me is more significant is I did work with really great leadership when I was there, and I think one of the lessons that it taught me really, perhaps about halfway through my time there, and I really feel like I grew up professionally when I was there, is that actually as a leader you don't need to know everything. The great skill is being able to know where to go to find the information, who needs to be in the room, who you need to consult with, and the skill is in the synthesis of that and saying, actually, for the long-term benefit of the organisation, the people, the causes we're here to serve, this is what we need to do. So that's the bit that has very, very much stayed with me, and that I feel I've been able to take, and deliberately taken, and adapted into what are smaller organisations, but consultation is often even more important in those environments.
So if the leadership journey has been one of evolution for you, this is your first CEO appointment. So stepping into it and reflecting back, what surprised you the most that you just couldn't have anticipated before actually being a CEO for the first time?
Look, you can anticipate that the buck stops with you.
But I have said that many times.
But that is that's ultimately one of the challenges. In terms of what I couldn't anticipate, it's actually the similarity between organisations and between the challenges that you're faced with. Something that or things that I have seen at Clown Doctors Australia, some of them look and feel really similar to experiences at the Climate Council, or they look and feel really similar to the experiences at Taronga. And whilst the context is different, the timing is different, and my role, absolutely, as CEO is different, I think there is a level in some respects of familiarity there, which is helpful because there is so much unknown. Stepping into health, understanding the arts and health space, that was a very, very steep curve that I had to get up. And in some respects, having the familiarity of actually there are just challenges that come with being in and running organisations was a nice counterbalance for that exponential curve that you go on in terms of learning about the particular organisation or the particular industry that you're in.
So moving on a little bit from sort of leadership learnings, Clown Doctors Australia, you used a phrase, we put our name on the door. So many organisations are moving away from what they do being part of their role, their organisational title, to something a bit more that covers everything. And you know, that's we've seen that in a number of, particularly in the disability services space, for example. You went from being the Humour Foundation to Clown Doctors Australia. So I'm really keen to understand how you approached leading that change, and also I think initially I was thinking about building trust, but probably it's more maintaining trust and credibility with your stakeholders.
I think it's interesting just to the piece around stakeholders. It was also about building trust because I was relatively new into the role. So I think if I'd been there for 5 years, it might have been maintaining trust, but it was actually about building trust, whether that was internally or externally. As far as putting the name on the door, you know, the Humour Foundation, as we were previously known, had been around for 26 years when we embarked on this process of, you know, really interrogating the brand. Even though the organisation had been around for that period of time, when I was telling people that I was considering CEO role, I'd been appointed, I would have to say the Humour Foundation, and they'd look at me curiously and I'd say, oh, you probably know them best for their work as clown doctors, paediatric hospitals. And people would say, oh, yes, of course. My niece, my daughter, my friend's daughter had an experience with them. So I think really there was a barrier to the organisation's growth and its ability to get cut through in a landscape that is increasingly competitive and challenging to work in, being the non-for-profit space, particularly in children's health. So it was about responding to a challenge that the organisation had, but also trying to realise the great potential to grow the impact of the work that we do.
So it's early days still. Have you seen any reaction? Like, have you noticed any uptick? Have you seen anything that's made you go, we made the right decision?
Look, it's interesting. I didn't answer the question you asked about the process that we went through.
Yeah.
We've made the right decision because the feedback has been unanimously positive. But I also think part of that is we embarked on a very consultative process from day one. So certainly it was really clear to me that we needed to address the brand and our profile and the way that we were able to build awareness out within the market. But that wasn't a case of myself or the leadership team or the board saying we are going to become Clown Doctors Australia. What we did was actually went right back to basics, which is who are we? What is our purpose? What do we stand for? And from there, how do we best communicate that out to the market? And if you're able to do that, and we did it with external stakeholders, with key supporters, with hospital partners, aged care partners we work with, as well as with all of our staff and all of our performers. To have everybody contribute to that who we are makes it really simple to say, and this is how we go out and effectively communicate about ourselves. So what it meant was that if we come now and you say, what's been the response and the reaction, one of the most important things for me is that people who contributed to that process are able to say, you heard us, and we can see our language reflected in the beliefs or the value set that we have and the way we articulate our purpose. I had one member of my leadership team who shed a tear when we actually came to here is the purpose and the vision statement for the organisation. And that says that, we've got people who are giving it themselves. You've done it in a way that means people are engaged, and it will create a really strong foundation for us to succeed going forward.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Early days, but all the signs are good.
Yes, early days. But
I think that, is it Michelle Obama that said, you cannot be what you cannot see? And in a way, that comment that you made about people reflecting back to you, that they see the words that they used in the consultation process reflected in the documentation that's gone out. It really does. It's that layering of enabling people to come along that change journey as well. So I'm really now sort of taking tack a little bit. Keen to understand what sort of supports you've leaned into in your first year, whether it's peer-to-peer circles or professional mentoring, and how have they been critical to the sort of the success and the journey so far?
Life is a team sport.
Yes.
And I think it would be remiss of me not to give as the first answer to that question that it's actually been my husband. And that's not the professional questioning, but it's about giving space.
Yes.
And I think that's something that that you need when you step into a new role. You can jump down the path of, I need more education, I need to go and do other courses, but it's actually creating the space to do the work well, and the space to know and understand the purpose and the people you're there to work with. Yep. So being able to create that space was actually one of the most important things for me with 2 young children. But if I come back into the professional space, the leadership team at Clown Doctors Australia has been an incredible support. And amongst that, I have someone, our artistic director, David Simons. He's wonderful. He's been with the organisation for 25 years.
Right.
And,
there are corporate knowledge, right?
A lot of corporate knowledge, not just corporate knowledge, but it's an intimate knowledge of the work and its impact, and how it's evolved over time. Because there's 2 curves that I think you go on.
Yeah.
One is the leadership curve.
Yes.
The other is the organisational curve, knowing and understanding the people and what drives them and programs and stakeholders. So being able to really lean into that expertise that has sat within the organisation for such a long period of time was really important. And in that same vein, our chair, who asks great questions, that's what I always ask if a board is ask great questions, because that's what challenges me in the role. Yep. Externally, it is definitely the network, and that can be part of a more formal peer-to-peer network, but also informally, people who are also in the CEO role or might sit in an executive director role for a much larger organisation, because we are often dealing with the same challenges. So it's the ability to be and to feel safe to have conversations about challenges that you're experiencing, and it's the little tidbits or the different perspectives as to how you resolve or work through some of those that have been most helpful.
So I suppose, coming back to your earlier point, the similarities that the organisations you've worked for have faced is reflected back in the fact that the CEOs that sit around the leadership tables that we host here, for example,
yes, absolutely,
there are common stories.
Yes.
So what's accelerated your growth the most? So what were the sort of moments or points in time that really accelerated your growth as a CEO?
I think there are 2 I'd call out. One has 2 parts, but it's about people. Yeah. And we're on the journey together as the CEO. The role is, it is to set the tone and the ambition in a lot of respects for the organisation, but you can't do that on your own. Yep. So if you think about our leadership team, 2 key decisions. One was a really great hire coming into the organisation quite early on when I was there. Culturally, professionally, for a whole range of reasons, just really shifted the dial. And the other was relatively small restructure within the organisation that also ensured that we could better meet the objectives that we were setting ourselves, but also, assisted others to really realise their potential and what they could give to the organisation. So creating a really, really strong leadership team that's now been the same for about 2 years was wonderful. The second thing was the decision to do simultaneously the work on the rebrand, our 5-year strategy, and our first social impact framework.
Oh.
And I remember...
What was that about the husband? Have you taken him out to dinner?
Well, yes, a few times. But I remember sitting down and talking to the leadership team about wanting to do all of this work in conjunction.
Yeah.
And questions about, are we biting off more than we can chew? It absolutely shifted the pace of the organisation. But we delivered all three of those things in October this year. That the aim was to release them all together, but they are the foundations on which we are now able to grow over the next 5 years. So we can get on with the doing, creating greater impact, communicating the work that we do much more effectively. So it was the decision point to do that and go after it really aggressively. Because without it, there's this risk that we keep doing great work but not enough of it, and we can't then generate the support.
And it's interesting because I think that comes back to one of my observations over working with charities for a long time is the leadership team need to see themselves as a team.
Yeah.
And what I'm hearing is that yes, you bit off maybe a little bit more than you can chew, but everybody was very focused on what the team had to deliver as opposed to BAU delivering in your swim lane, so to speak, is that you had to pull together. Do you think that helped consolidate the way the team engaged with one another, just having these three chunky pieces of work?
Oh, absolutely. But don't get me wrong, we're always having to say, no, we're getting too transactional. We need to pull ourselves out. But that clarity for us of here are the big rocks that we need to deliver, and being able to share that as well with the team. Here is what we're focused on for the next 3 months or the next 6 months, has helped provide that clarity to everyone. But in addition to that, it's why are we doing it? And it always comes back. We're a for-purpose organisation. It's so we can create a future where children don't fear going to hospital, where people don't age alone, and we want to be able to transform that experience. And if we're limited by the resources that we have or the capacity we've got to engage effectively, we can't do that. And it's providing that North Star and how these big rocks will help us get there that I think accelerates everyone within the organisation, but also means we can work together really effectively, and we can have the hard conversations and say to each other, no, I can't do that now because it will distract me from these big things that we've agreed are priorities for us.
So I want to, you're a very positive person.
I am.
And you're very prepared. I've known you for a while, and I love that about you. I think, so in closing, I think, how has your view of impact leadership and success changed? And I'd really like you not to say it's just evolved, because, if you think back to those, how is leading this organisation perhaps changed the way you define impact and success compared to earlier in your career?
In some respects, it's much more tangible because unlike other roles that I've held, the work I can see almost immediately the impact of what it is that we're doing. So that's really, really significant for me. I think the other thing that it's taught me, and I hope this doesn't sort of counter what it is that you've asked me to do, is that the journey is not linear. And actually, I am incredibly, you say I'm a positive person, but I am deeply satisfied and I feel perhaps more purposeful than I ever have in doing this work. But that is the result of a whole range of experiences that I didn't think meant I would be here when I studied law and applied finance, and I became an M&A, went into M&A advisory out of university.
Yes, we didn't even talk about we did not even talk about that. I was thinking about that earlier.
It's that the path can change, and actually there is, I'm not chasing a bigger organization necessarily. What I am chasing and what leadership means is doing an exceptional job in the role that you're in and knowing that you can achieve the ambition and the potential for the organization.
Yes.
So I think the other thing that comes to mind, so having just said that, is this notion that leadership is actually about being and particularly being a CEO, I feel like I am a custodian for the organization.
Yes.
And I say that because I didn't found it. I'm not a performer on the ground delivering incredible work. I'm not connecting with children and with people in aged care. But what has shifted is that as a CEO, I need to make decisions that ensure the long-term success and sustainability of the organisation. Yes, they can be hard ones. Sometimes they're really straightforward.
Yes.
But they can be really hard. And if I wear that hat, which is I'm here as a custodian, this is not my organisation, but my job is to take it to new heights from where it's been, then I can walk away and be incredibly, and by walk away I mean go home at night, to be really clear.
Relax.
To be really clear, I can go home and I can be really comfortable that I've done a really good job. And it might be that some decisions are hard and they're tough and they don't all fall exactly the way that I might have wanted or liked them to, or the way our leadership team might have liked or wanted them to. But actually, if I know deep down that it's the right decision for the organisation, then I've done the job that I was engaged to do.
Thank you. Thank you. She had to dig a bit deep there. It's been a delight having Emma join us today, and thank you for joining and having a listen to our conversation today. Emma, thank you so much, and I really look forward to you delivering on the ambitions that you and your team and the board have set for Clown Doctors Australia.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me, and a lovely conversation at the start of a new year as well.
I know. So onwards and upwards. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Liska.
Okay, bye.